So, in my truck again. Um, for some reason, I decided to film this video in here. Um, I grew up in kind of my late teen years in the Mark Miller YouTube era. If y'all are familiar with him, he was one of the first prominent uh, gay YouTubers at the time. He made a coming out video. He did a lot of videos with his boyfriend at the time. It's kind of what's influenced my content quite a bit. Um, so I was around 17 is when I accepted to myself that I was gay. Um, I always knew, well, not always. Around 10 years old, I probably realized something was different about me. Around 10 years old is when I had my first um, experimental experience with another male. Um, and really, that whole thing is another story in itself. So fast forward to 17, I am a junior in high school. Um, Prior to that, I was homeschooled the majority of my schooling career. Um, I started public school for the first time in 10th grade. And of course, I was an outcast. I wasn't very socialized, um, obviously, because of my homeschooling background. Um, so, junior year, again, 17 years old, I accepted myself. I think at the time I came out as pan or bi, maybe as kind of a soft launch, if you will. Um, Came out to my brother who didn't take it well. Him and I shared a room since forever, since forever. As long as I would live with my parents, we shared a room. So obviously we lived in the same room and we didn't talk for about a year after I came out to him. It's because we came from a very religious household, uh, particularly my mother. So around the same time frame, still 17, I got a procedure done. I got my wisdom teeth removed. Now, obviously, I was high as fuck, um, and in my intoxicated wisdom, I decided it was a great time to come out to my mother and my sister, which my mother obviously didn't take well based on her strong religious beliefs. And my sister did not care. In my youth, I'm the youngest. My siblings and I did not get along at all. And it was mostly my fault because I was a fucking disaster of a child. And a lot of it was due to internal conflict that I've now discovered and realized. But yeah, we didn't get along at growing up at all. And me coming out, as far as my sister is concerned, really changed our relationship for the better. Uh, Now I'd absolutely consider her one of my best friends. And during that process, she became that loving figure that I needed in my mother, that my mother wasn't really providing me at the time. Um, so after that took place, I'd say I probably got to around 18 or 19 years old. I had my first real kind of crush on a guy who was a straight friend. Um, and a lot of you know how that story usually goes. It was my first real heartbreak. Um, and I turned to alcohol. So at that point, I kind of started spiraling. Um, Unbeknownst at the time, this spiral was really a substance abuse issue that was disguised as kind of a depression. Um, my maternal and paternal side both have a long history of substance abuse, specifically alcohol. Um, Neither of my parents consumed alcohol. There was never any alcohol in the house. So I had my first drink at about 19 years old, at an older friend's house who was trying to help me get through this heartbreak. So yeah, that was really the launch of what became a long-term substance abuse issue. So I had a little moment about 18 or 19 where I had kind of a an acute crisis. Um, Surprisingly, my parents stepped in. They got me into to mental health treatment, and we thought that was the best route to take because again, we weren't aware yet that this was really a substance abuse issue, and not completely a mental health issue. So, seeing a therapist, I was seeing him, I think, 2 times a week for about 6 months. That was a great start in getting me back on the right track. It really assisted, in getting me healthy to a point that I could function, and it did that. So I did that again for about 6 months. I guess I'm probably 19, almost 20 now. 20 years old. I'm not exactly happy with where I am in life at the time. So I made the decision to join the Marine Corps. Um, Now, both my parents are Army veterans, so there was a strong sense of military structure growing up in my household. Again, mostly from my mother. She was the stern disciplinarian in our household. Um, my parents were and are currently married. My dad was away most of my young life at work, overseas. He worked quite a bit, so I'd say at least half of my birthdays I did not see my father, which I've never held against him because he was doing what he thought was best for our family and being able to financially provide for us. Um, so I joined the Marine Corps at 20. I enlisted as an 0311. It's a infantry rifleman. I did my first 2 years in the DC area, um, and that's what goes into me coming out in the Marine Corps, which was something. So it in ITB, which is Infantry Training Battalion, is one of the first training courses, if you will, that you go through after graduating from boot camp. If you're an infantryman, if you are a non-infantry MOS, you go to what's called MCT, Marine Combat Training. So I go to ITB. It's a 2-month schoolhouse where I meet some of my closest friends. And a number of those individuals are who I came out to initially while still in training. And they honestly, believe it or not, accepted me with open arms. Um, so I get to my first unit, which again is in the DC area. And I'm still very closeted. My friends did a great job in not telling my biggest secret to other people. And if you have any experience being in the military, especially in combat arms, when you are new, when you are what's called a boot, a fresh green Marine, you are the lowest person on that totem pole. Um, you are doing your best to do your job well so you don't get fucked up, so you don't get hazed. Um, so I kind of had to create this person. I had to create this new identity, this strong, aggressive, um, really unhinged individual. And I did that because I knew that being gay in a combat MOS, there were going to be stigmas, there were going to be stereotypes, and I wanted to completely break that mold. I wanted to be judged based on my performance as a warfighter and my ability to lead men before I could be judged on who I slept with. Um, so about 6 months in, I'm killing it in the fleet. I'm an absolute stud. I am accomplishing what I set out to accomplish. I'm also getting back into that substance abuse pattern. I am drinking a ton. My first week in the fleet, I turned 21, so I was obviously able to fucking get hammered every night if I wanted to, and I did. Um, and this was also a time where I was exploring sexually and kind of having my hoe phase, if you will. So, long story short, there was another Marine in a different section who was a pogue. A pogue is a person other than grunt. He was another MOS, but we were in the same unit, but not in the same section. Um, we ended up kind of getting very drunk one night. I went over to his room. We had a hookup, uh, and during that, his roommate ended up coming in. He was supposed to be out for the night, but he ended up coming in the room. Called us messing around, and then he reported us. So this gets back to command. At the time, they didn't know that I was with a guy. I guess his roommate just said that I was having a relation in the barracks. He didn't specify the sex, I guess. So my squad leaders were like, this is no big deal. People bring girls in the barracks all the time, and my friends are there with me, the friends that know I am gay, and they kind of give me this look like now's kind of the time. So I told them straight up, my sergeants, it wasn't a girl, it was a guy. That's why this is a thing. That's why command is concerned. So yeah, I'm gay, and again, they accepted me with open arms. And I think a lot of that was because I took the time to establish myself as a stud, as being a great member of my team and really good at my fucking job. Um, so again, accept me with open arms. Um, I continued my career there for 2 years before I PCS conducted a permanent change of station to my next unit, which was 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, Camp Lejeune. Um, and when I got there, I was a lot more open off the rip. Um, and a lot of things happened kind of in between there. A lot of things dealing with my alcoholism that we'll probably get into in a different video because that's an entire storyline in itself. But yeah, that was me coming out in the Marine Corps. It may be anticlimactic to some people. A lot of people are expecting a lot of bigotry and homophobia kind of coming from a structured heteronormative military environment, which is just not the case. I did a little bit over 4 years in the Marine Corps before I got out honorably. And frankly, there is no time. There's no time in the military for homophobia. There's no time in the military really for racism. All those things are thrown out the window because of the high stress environment that you're in, and because of the close relationships that you build with your boys, with your best friends, with honestly what I still consider my family. Um, there's just no time for it. So all of those things are really just set aside. Those personal opinions are thrown out the window when it comes to operating at that high of a level. So yeah, that's that.